Hey guys, it's Christina with All Mom Does, and last week my family did something really fun and something that you probably wouldn't expect us to do during a pandemic. We went to Disney World, and not only was this our first visit to Disney World during a pandemic, it was actually our first trip to Disney World ever. So today I just want to talk with you a little bit about that experience and maybe give you some tips. So this video is going to kind of have three parts. So the first part, I'm going to talk about Disney's COVID-19 measures. So some of the differences you can see in the park, some of the things that they're doing differently in order to reduce the spread of COVID-19 and keep their guests safe. The second thing I'm going to talk about is some extra steps that I took to keep our family extra safe and reduce our own risk of exposure while we were there. And then the third part is going to be just general tips for first time Disney World visitors, because we fell into that category. So a little bit about our experience. Last Christmas, we surprised our kids on Christmas morning with the announcement that we were going to go to Disney World for spring break. So we're supposed to go last April. You know the story, everything shut down. We went into lockdown for a few months. At the time, we just rebooked our visit for October because, nobody knew what the pandemic was going to do. We kind of thought everything would be back to normal by fall. Obviously, it wasn't. And then we really just held that trip loosely. So we thought, well, we've rebooked it. If we go, we go. If we don't go, we don't go. We're just going to see what happens. Then time ticked by, fall started approaching, and we really got to the point where we had to decide if we were actually going to go or if we were just going to cancel our reservation. And I did a lot of research into what people's experiences were like. What were the safety measures that Disney was taking? Did I feel comfortable going? And we decided to actually go. Now, before I get into this, I think it's important that you know a little bit about our family, and we are not a family that takes this virus lightly. We do wear masks. We're not anti-mask by any means, so we avoid big gatherings. We're very limited in our social circle. We're all working and schooling from home, so we're not cavalier in our attitude at all. So I don't want you to get the impression that we're really careless because we chose to go to a big public place for vacation during this pandemic. And I think that's one of the reasons I want to give you some information on how you can do this a little more safely. And I know that no activity is no risk, and I wouldn't even say that this is low risk. Of course it's not. Of course there's risk involved, but our family's personal approach is we want to limit our risk, limit our exposure, but we're also not living in complete lockdown. We're trying to find the balance of, we don't want to be careless. We don't want to pretend like this isn't a big deal. We don't want to put people at risk. We don't want to put ourselves at risk. So that's kind of my preface before I get too deep into this thing. Our family also, I think you need to know, is we're not high risk. So nobody in our family has any major health issues, because if they did, I really think that our decision would be different, and we probably wouldn't go because that just wouldn't be a wise choice. So every family needs to make their own decision, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to share some of this information with you today. So let's start with some of the changes that Disney has made to their regular operations to improve safety and reduce the risk of virus transmission. So number one is you have to have a reservation to go into a park. So you can't just show up at the gate, buy a ticket, or maybe you have a ticket in advance or an annual pass or something. You can't just show up and gain admission. You have to make a reservation in advance. You can do that on the My Disney Experience app. So you have to have a ticket first, and then you make a reservation. And you can only make a reservation for one park per day. There is no park hopping. And you can't make a reservation for two different parks. So you got to pick your park, and that's where you go that day. The other major thing that you need to be aware of is that masks are mandatory. And when I say masks are mandatory, I know that means different things in different parts of the country, different areas, different businesses, but Disney is serious about masks. If your child is age 2 or older, they are expected to wear a mask all day, no breaks. There are little comfort stations, specific places in the park where you can go into and sit at a table, and once you are seated, you may remove your mask. But as far as walking around with your mask below your nose, with your mask super loose, taking it off for just a 5-minute break, even just sitting on a bench and taking it off, and making your own little break place away from other people, not acceptable. There are people walking around that are checking your masks. They're very vigilant. So I heard people all the time reminding folks to pull up their mask over their nose. There is no grace for young children. I heard several cast members ask, like, parents of little toddlers, how old are they? The parents would be like, oh, they're not going to turn 2 for another couple of months, or things like that. I heard cast members remind parents about having their child pull up their masks. So they definitely weren't giving extra leeway for young kids. So that's really, really important to know. The other thing is there are no medical exemptions, at least not right now. So if you have a medical condition that precludes you from wearing a mask, you cannot gain admission. And also they have very strict standards about what kind of masks they'll permit. So if your mask has a vent on it, you can't wear that mask. If you have a neck gaiter or tied a bandana around your face, that's not acceptable. The mask has to cover your nose and your mouth, and it has to be pretty tightly fit. It has to go around your head or around your ears. So they're really strict about masks. So before you go, it's really important to consider whether, one, you can stand to wear a mask in heat and humidity, and whether your children can do that as well. So personally, I would refrain if I had like a 2 to 4 year old. I just think that would be too hard on them. I would be frustrated by trying to get them to wear it. But that's just me. But anyway, I think it's really important to know before you go that they are serious about masks. It's very strict. There really isn't any getting around it. So if you are thinking about a Disney vacation, just know that that's going to be an expectation, and that's something that you need to plan for. The next change that I want to talk about is that they are taking temperatures at the entrance to every park and Disney Springs. And so it's very fast. I mean, it's just the little temperature guns that they point at your forehead. And so it doesn't create a huge backup at all. And so it's pretty fluid. It just flows right through. But if you do end up getting a fever rating, then they're going to have you and your whole party step aside and wait a little bit, because sometimes it's Florida, it's hot, it's humid, and it's pretty common for people's temperatures to be elevated if you've been walking or running or whatever. So they know that one time could just be a one-off. So they'll have you and your party step aside, cool down, have some water. They'll retake your temperature. If you fail a second time, your whole party is denied entrance into the park. So you really need to make sure you're healthy. Don't try to sneak in if you're not feeling well. It's not fair to the other guests anyway. And just know that they are going to be taking your temperatures. They're really serious about it, but they have a pretty good system in place. It's actually really fast. The other thing to know, there are no fast passes. So prior to COVID-19, you got 3 fast passes per day that you could book in advance, so you didn't have to wait in the long lines. But they need the extra space for the queues because they're trying to social distance all the guests. So know that you will get no fast passes, and you're gonna have to wait in line for every single ride. Now, a word about wait times. When Disney reopened in July, word got out, people were pretty cautious at first, but then people were saying what an amazing experience it was, and there were no waits on some of the most popular rides, and attendance started increasing a little bit, but still it was still really great. And then I went mid-October, so last week, and there were definitely people there. So word's gotten out that Disney's doing a great job managing risk, keeping people safe, and You know, people showed up in hopes that there wouldn't be waits, but there definitely were. Now, like I said, I'm a Disney first timer, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but I found the waits to be reasonable. So our longest line was a little more than an hour. We did that one time. We had a couple rides that we had to wait for about an hour, and then the majority were about 30 to 45 minutes. Any line that said it was 40 minutes or less, we found that it was really easy to get through. We just felt that was really reasonable. And part of the reason is because of social distancing, they have all the guests spread out in line. And so you're constantly walking because, you know, you're not all bunched up. So you're all, there's 6 feet, actually more. Usually there's like 8 to 12 feet between people. The queues seem to go pretty quickly, but don't show up expecting that there's no waits. There are definitely waits on the most popular rides. They are long. They can get to an hour or more, hour and a half. But like I said, I found it to be reasonable, and we got on everything that we were hoping to get on. So speaking of rides and wait times, ride capacity has been reduced. So they limit your party to one car or whatever. So they don't have as many people riding, which affects wait times. But we didn't find that it really affected our times too badly. And we watched on the app. So on the My Disney Experience app, we looked at the wait times to decide what ride we wanted to go on. And we found those to be pretty spot on. I think there was maybe one that was a little longer. Several were shorter, but they were pretty close. And more often than not, they were a little shorter than longer. So that was good. Also, the other thing that happened a couple times is they do sanitize and clean the rides more often. So they shut everything down for a bit, and that can stop the rides for, like 20 minutes, half hour. So a couple times we did get stuck in lines that were cleaning, but it wasn't too bad, and it wasn't every ride. So just kind of luck of the draw there. So one of the things to know about lines is they have line markers everywhere to facilitate social distancing. And it's a big clear line on the floor that says, wait here. And then once the next person moves up, you move up to the next spot. So there are lines, of course, at rides, but also at restaurants, at the entrance to gift shops, entrance to the park to getting your temperature taken. So there are lines everywhere keeping people separated. The other great thing actually that I liked about this, I mean, before I mentioned that it made the lines kind of move faster, and just because you're constantly moving because everyone's spread out. But also people aren't always on your tail, right? So you don't feel so claustrophobic in line. So we just felt like we had our space, and it didn't feel really stressful. It just felt like we were waiting in line. It wasn't a big deal. You know, you can kind of get stressed out by other people if they're breathing down your neck. So it was really nice. It does make the lines appear super long though. So there were many instances where on some of the really popular rides, the line was coming out of the ride, down the street, around the corner. I mean, it looked ridiculous, but again, that's just to facilitate the social distancing. And then once we got up closer, it moved pretty fast. So that's another thing to prepare for. The other thing is hand sanitizer. They have hand sanitizer everywhere. Of course, I brought hand sanitizer because I'm not going to go to Disney World in a pandemic unprepared. But honestly, I didn't even need it. I didn't take it out once because hand sanitizer everywhere. Okay, so it's there when you first get in line for a ride, and then when you get up to the front of the line to get on the ride, there's another hand sanitizer. When you get off the ride, there's another hand sanitizer. When you're checking out, ordering your food, when you're at the gift shop, literally everywhere. Everywhere there's a potential touch point, hand sanitizer. So makes that super easy to stay clean. Wash your hands whenever you can. So the next thing to be aware of is right now at Disney World, there are no fireworks, there are no parades, and there are no character meet and greets. So they're trying to eliminate these events that draw a crowd because they want to obviously facilitate social distancing. So just know that a lot of those kind of quintessential Disney experiences are not available right now. Sometimes characters do show up, But there's another cast member there with a sign saying stay 6 feet away. So you're not going to really take a close-up picture with anyone or do autographs or any of that fun stuff. But you can wave or, talk to them from a distance. And instead of parades, because Disney knows how much kids love to see the characters, they've come up with a new solution, and they're called cavalcades. And basically they're mini parades of small groups of characters. So there's like a princess cavalcade, and there's a Mickey and Friends, Goofy and Friends, like Toy Story, things like that. So just small groups of characters together that once in a while will just pop up and be going through the streets. There's no published schedule for when different groups come around, because again, they don't want people to gather in advance. So it's kind of luck of the draw who you see and whether you see them, but when they come around, it's really fun. So that's another way that they've really tried to facilitate social distancing. And then the final thing that I have to mention is that there's no character dining. So princess breakfast, dining with Mickey, there's none of that right now, except I did learn right before I went that there are 3 restaurants that actually are doing a modified version of character dining. And if you go on Disney's website, you can find out what those are. There's actually a 4th that will be opening in December. But because it's so limited, those reservations fill up. And right now you can make dining reservations 60 days in advance. So normally it's 180 days, I believe, but right now it's only 60 days in advance. So if those things are important to you and you want to try to get into a character dining experience, I would recommend that you try to make reservations as soon as possible. But again, it's a modified experience, and I don't know what that looks like, and I haven't heard, so you might want to do some extra research into that before you book it. Now, I thought that Disney did a really, really great job of implementing their precautions, because a lot of times companies will publish precautions, but then they don't necessarily follow through with them. But I just felt like they did an exceptional job. And so I felt really safe. I felt like they were keeping people apart. Of course, there were some people that were in close proximity. You're not going to totally eliminate that. But for the most part, I felt like the things that they were doing were great. And again, the mask requirement, I found that people were super respectful of it. I think they understood that being able to attend Disney is a privilege. And if they're not going to follow the rules, then 1, they're going to get kicked out, or 2, Disney's going to have to close again. So I found that people weren't trying to cheat. A lot of places you go and you see people are trying to cheat with their masks and wear it below their nose or whatever. They're taking a lot of breaks and wearing it over their chin, but I didn't see that. People were really respectful and really following the rules. And when they didn't, cast members would remind them. So I really appreciated that. But beyond the things that Disney did, the next thing I want to talk about are some extra measures that I took to keep our family safe while we were there. And a lot of that has to do with our hotel stay. So I'm not super concerned about hotels. They do, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they qualify more as a low risk activity because it really is just our family. But we did some things to try to just reduce the number of person-to-person interactions we had. And the first was we did a grocery delivery. So I ordered through Instacart. Publix delivery is through Instacart to our hotel, and I ordered snacks and stuff, but also some breakfast items, because I knew that, one, if we're getting up early to go to the parks, we're probably not going to want to go to a restaurant and sit down. So it was partially convenience, but partially health and safety measure. So I ordered those Jimmy Dean pancakes on a stick, right, that you just microwave. And those my kids were very happy with. So that was super easy and super cheap and really convenient. So that's one of the things we did. Continuing with the delivery theme, we actually ordered Uber Eats for dinner every night. And again, this is part health and safety to reduce contact in a restaurant, but also part convenience, because I know my family, and I know after spending an entire day having fun in a park, the last thing they want to do is take a bus to a restaurant, go in there, sit down, be on their best behavior, order food and eat. No, we just want to go home and relax. So every night while we were on the bus back to our hotel, I would get out Uber Eats and we'd decide what we were going to eat, and I would order it right there on the bus. And then shortly after we got back to our hotel, it was ready and we would just eat in our room. So that was another nice way to avoid restaurants and just kind of limit that risk and exposure to other people that we might have in a hotel restaurant. And then another thing, our hotel that we were in, we stayed at Shades of Green, which is the military resort on Walt Disney World property. And if you want more information on that specific hotel, I actually have another video. You can go and see a tour and see our room and see what our stay was like there. It was actually pretty great. But one of the things that our hotel specifically did was they limited housekeeping services because they wanted to keep people out of the rooms to, one, protect the guests, and two, protect their staff. So housekeeping was only on request. So if they would do garbage cans and then towels if we wanted them, but you know, we made our own bed and put our things away and all that stuff. So to limit it even further, we actually put the do not disturb on our door, and then every morning we would just set out our garbage cans, and so that way they didn't even have to come in the room. So they would just empty their garbage cans and leave the empty cans out there in the hallway that we would take back in. And then if we needed anything like toilet paper or towels, we would just leave a note on the door and they would leave it for us. But it limited the number of people in our room, which was pretty great. The next thing we did was I brought tons of masks. So I brought, of course, Disney themed masks, ordered them on Etsy, right? But then in addition to these, because when you're in Florida and everyone's different, your weather's going to be different, your family's going to be different, their tolerance for their masks is going to be different. But throughout the day, they might get a little wet and uncomfortable, just either from the breathing or from sweat, or if you get caught in a downpour without an umbrella. And so if they're wet, you're not going to want to keep wearing them, right? So I also brought some disposable masks just because it's kind of nice to switch. So these are more comfortable, but they're hot. These are a little less comfortable and they don't hold up as well, but they're more lightweight and they're cooler. So, you know, every once in a while someone would feel like they're too hot, and so they want a disposable one, but then it was kind of getting irritating, and so they wanted the more comfortable one. So just, we had some options. And then in addition to the mask, I bought, I'll show you, I bought this little thing. I don't know if you can see, these are adjusters. These are little silicone things that go on the mask that you can adjust the fit. And so that way I knew that they would fit properly and my kids wouldn't complain about wearing them. So if it's too big, you can make the ear loops smaller. If the ear loops are too tight, you can open it up more. So this was a great way to customize masks, because I know especially for kids it can be really hard to get the right fit, or they're falling down or whatever. So that was just another little measure that helped keep us more comfortable and therefore more safe, because the kids weren't always playing with our masks, and we're supposed to minimize touching our face, right? Also, I don't know if this is a comfort or a safety thing, but I bought us all hats. Bought them all on Amazon before we left because we're in Florida and masks plus sunglasses equals foggy sunglasses, right? And so I knew that would be trouble because it's sunny around here. So I bought hats. Full disclosure, we did eventually, we used our sunglasses too, because sometimes it was just super sunny. But I really think that this having hats really helped to limit the amount that we needed our sunglasses, because it helped shield our eyes from the sun. So it just helped keep us a little more comfortable. But then, in a stroke of pure genius, moms, you have to do this. This was kind of the highlight. I sewed a button on our hats. You can see on each side, So we could attach our masks to them, so that way our ears didn't get tired and we stayed a lot more comfortable. It was like the best thing I did, and we got a lot of comments on that strategy because people were complaining their ears hurt. You can also, if you're wearing like Mickey ears, you can also put the mask, like a headband type Mickey ears, you can put the mask around the band, and that way it saves your ears, but sometimes that bothers your head after a while. My son bought the traditional Mickey ears that go over the head with like the elastic underneath, and so I ended up cutting the elastic and getting a little sewing kit from the hotel and sewed his mask directly onto his Mickey ears, so it kind of acted as the elastic. So there's lots of different ways to get creative with masks to save your ears, but I do recommend that strategy. It worked really well in our family. And also, the last thing for safety, it's not just about us, right? And so our plan was to isolate as soon as we got home as well, because we don't want to unintentionally spread something that we could have picked up at Disney World, because like I said, nothing is 100% risk-free, no matter what strategies we use. And so, we're not just going to go home and be out and about and hanging out with people, so we're also thinking about other people because we want to prevent the spread in our communities. So let's not be careless. Let's have fun. Let's be cautious. Let's not be careless. And let's be mindful of others too. I also did a few things to restore some of the Disney magic. So maybe this is section 2B. So somewhere between safety mitigation measures and then first time advice. So obviously COVID did steal some of the magic of Disney. Some of the events aren't there. We can't do the meet and greets. There's no fireworks, that type of stuff. We still had a great time. I'm not making this video to scare you or dissuade you from going, but I just think information is power, and I just wanted you to be prepared, because I wanted to have as much information as possible before I went, because that, I think, helped our experience be better. So anyway, some of the things I did to restore some of the magic that was taken from us by COVID are, one, I did matching shirts, which that's not unique to COVID. I know that families do that all the time, but I did that as well, since it's we've been waiting 10 months for this trip since we told the kids last Christmas, right? So I did make us one set of matching shirts. I ordered vinyl off of Etsy, the iron-on transfer vinyl, and then I picked up shirts from like super clearance and from thrift stores, because generally I'm really picky about the way shirts fit. With kid sizing is not consistent, and so I didn't want to order shirts from somebody and then get them and they didn't fit properly. So I just wanted to buy shirts that felt comfortable, that fit well, that the fabric was something that my kids would wear, not complain it's too itchy or something. And then I ordered the vinyl separately and then made the shirts. Then I only did that for one day, so we were in the parks for 4 days, but I thought it'd be fun to have Disney themed shirts the rest of the day, not necessarily matching, but Mickey or some character. But the problem is we haven't been a Disney family in the past, and so we had one Disney shirt in our whole house. My 7-year-old daughter had a shirt, and so none of us had shirts, and I didn't want to buy a bunch of new clothes to go on this trip. And so I started scouring like Goodwill for decent looking used shirts, and then I also looked at some online marketplaces like ThredUp and Mercari, and I found shirts for all of us. So it was really fun. So for every day that we were in the parks, each of us had a shirt that was Disney themed, so that was pretty cool. For Mercari, here I'll give you my tip, and I think I use this for one of the hats too. I was like, well, let's see what I can get for as cheap as possible, because we'll see what's available. And I just filtered it by like $5 or less and free shipping, and boom, there were some options that popped up. So that was pretty awesome. Other things I did, of course, we did Disney themed masks like I showed you before. And then also my daughter and I did Disney themed nails the night before we left. You can probably see the remnants of them. They weren't perfect, but you know what? She loved them, and it was kind of just a fun thing to do in anticipation, because like I said, we have held this trip very loosely, so I feel like our anticipation was pretty low, because we're like, it's 2020. We might be canceled on at the last minute, you know, so I felt like we weren't building it up, even though it's a really big trip and exciting. So that was kind of a fun extra thing to add. And then the other final thing I did is I surprised my family with matching pajamas once we got to the hotel. So we were getting ready for bed our first night at Disney World. And I pulled out, you know, we all had matching pajama pants and shirts. So that was kind of cute, a cute way to bring the magic back. So again, none of that is too, you know, none of that is new. People do that all the time at Disney, but those are just a few things that I did to add to our experience, since I knew a lot of things were going to be different and not the traditional Disney experience. So next, I want to give you some tips for a Disney first timer. I think a lot of these things might be useful during any time, but not just pandemic time, but I think particularly right now, these are some helpful tips. So number one is make a list of your ride priorities before you go in the park and keep it on your phone. And this will just help guide your day. That way you're not distracted by other things, or if you're looking at your app, looking at wait times, you kind of know which ones to choose based on wait time. And that way you can make sure to get in the things that you want. Certainly we went on rides that weren't on our list. You know, we walked by something and it looked interesting, or the wait was 0, or my kids they became interested in something I didn't expect them to be interested in. But just having that list kind of made it a to-do list. And actually for my husband, I think it made it like a mission. He's like, what else is on our list? Where do we go next? I think it helped keep him engaged a little more. So just kind of know what you're going to do. This is especially important right now since there are no fast passes and you're going to have to wait in line for every ride. If you click the link at the bottom of this video, you're going to go to the blog that accompanies it, and in there is a link to another Disney World expert that has compiled a list of rides to prioritize, like during the first hour of the day, during the second and third hour of the day, before the wait times get long. And they've kind of evaluated all the wait times and the trends and given you a list of, you know, what should you make sure to prioritize to get on at certain times of the day. It's not the same as in regular Disney times, which kind of surprised them. So it's really customized for this season. And so I would strongly encourage you to take a peek at that to help guide your day. We followed it and it actually served us really well. We got on every ride that we were hoping to get on. So the next tip for a first timer, and I'm going to repeat first timer because experienced Disney people probably will vehemently disagree with me on this, but my tip is to pack your lunch, because as a first timer, my priority was not experiencing food. My priority was experiencing as many rides as I could with my kids. And so we had planned and budgeted to eat lunch in the parks, but then when we were there, it felt really wasteful to be, you know, standing in line to get food or sitting down and relaxing. And so after the first day, we just went to our hotel store and we got a loaf of bread and some peanut butter and jelly, and I just made an entire loaf worth of peanut butter and jelly, and then we would eat them while we were standing in line for rides. So I don't think that this would be my tip if I went again, because then I think it would be more relaxed. I know very clearly, like, I've already done Small World once, don't need to do that ever again. So I don't need to stand in that line. You know, I know which rides I want to go on, I don't want to go on, which one I'm fine skipping. And then we can have kind of a more leisurely eating time. But for our family, our priority for the very first visit at Disney World was rides. And we found that taking out time to eat just felt kind of stressful, because we would have rather been waiting for a ride that we wanted to get on. So that's my second tip, is do bring a lunch. And then subsequent visits, you can prioritize food and experience all that Disney has to offer. But I don't know. So, don't hate me, Disney experts that love all the food. Sorry. You need to pack ponchos, pack an umbrella. So it's Florida. It rains. It might not rain for a long time, but when it does, you're going to get wet. So you can buy ponchos at the dollar store. So if you just get a few of those, put them in your backpack, easy peasy. If you do have a little kid, you might want to splurge for like a child size poncho because they're one size fits all at the dollar store. But if you wait until you're in Disney, you're going to be paying a premium. So just be prepared. Have some ponchos, have an umbrella. The umbrellas are extra helpful when you're waiting in line because, like I said, the lines kind of snake out really long right now. And so if it rains, you'll be prepared, but also you can block the sun if the sun's in your face because, you know, it's Florida. It could be hot and sunny. It might be downpouring. An umbrella will help you in both situations. I would also strongly recommend that you look at the park hours when you're planning your days in the park. So I live on the West Coast. Disney World is on the East Coast. If I'm getting up at 7 a.m. to be in a park by 9 a.m., my body is going to think it's 4 a.m. and I am not going to be happy. So we planned our first day in the park by choosing the latest start. So if you are going to have some time zone issues, make sure you pay attention. And I would just say your first day, choose, even if it's not like the park that you're most excited to go to or whatever, just make sure that you choose the lowest or the latest start time. So that way your body can kind of be rested. Which brings me to my next point, and that's to plan a rest day. So we arrived on a Saturday. We had Sunday all day to just relax and be in the pool, order our groceries. Monday, Tuesday, we went to parks. Wednesday, we had a break day, pool day, just relax, sleep in. Thursday, Friday, we went back to parks. So we did visit all 4 parks, but we had a break in the middle of them. Even after our rest day, honestly, Thursday, we were on the bus and we were still tired. So if you're planning to do just day after day after day, especially with small kids, it's going to get tough. And so I would really strongly encourage a break day. And right now with the reduced hours, so there's no extra magic hours, and the hours are reduced for the parks. It's hard to, leave and go to your hotel in the middle of the day and take a break and then go back, just because your hours are a little more limited. So if you can, I would strongly recommend a break day. And the benefit is at your hotel, if you're home for the day, in the middle of the day, those pools are going to be empty because everyone else is at the park. And so you've got it to yourself. Next, I would also strongly encourage you to prep your family. Let them know what to expect. Let them know there's going to be lines. Let them know they're going to have to wear a mask. We joked about putting on our pants every morning. So we put on our patient pants and we put on our positive pants. And if someone seemed like they were falling apart in the middle of the day, we'd be like, do you have your pants on? And then they would kind of snap out of it. So just, make it lighthearted, but do let them know what to expect so that they can emotionally prepare. And honestly, I think my kids thought it was going to be like worse than it was. And so it was a nice surprise that it was kind of fun. Honestly, it was better than any of us expected, just because I think we had prepared for the worst. But it was a really fantastic experience. Also, moms, bring a little mini purse or a fanny pack. The first day I didn't because my husband had a backpack that he brought all our snacks and water bottles and stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll just put my credit card in there and I'll just put my cell phone in there. But then whenever I wanted to take a picture or buy something, I had to find him and root around his backpack. So it was much easier once I just bought a little crossbody, teeny tiny little purse that could fit my cell phone and my credit card, and I could take it on rides. It was super easy. So don't forget that. I would also recommend that you do invest in magic bands. They're about, I think, like $25 per band. If you stay at a Disney resort, you get these, and they also act as your key, and then you can use them to, purchase things in the parks too. We stayed on property, like I mentioned, but we didn't stay in a Disney hotel. So we had to buy these ourselves, but they were, which incidentally, I bought for last Christmas, but normally they're used, you can use them also for your fast passes. So that's why they were going to be super useful. Obviously, no fast passes right now, but I still really liked having them because our tickets were linked on here. So it was super easy when we just went in the park, we have our tickets, it's on our wrist, we just get right in. But also the other reason is because we also purchased the memory maker, which is you can use the park photographers when they take your picture on a ride, you get all those pictures. It is pricey, but they automatically get sent to your app through your Magic Band. You don't even have to do anything. It's because of the RFID technology in them. And so it just made it super easy to capture memories. I hardly took any pictures, honestly, because I was like, I want to be present with my family. I want to have fun, and I don't want to be on my phone all the time. So it was really nice. I was really glad we had these. And then again, like I said, I also recommend the memory maker. And then my final tip is really don't try to do it on a tight budget, especially your first time. You know what? This is Disney. This is a big vacation, and you want to be the yes mom. You want to have some money in your budget to say yes to some fun souvenirs, to say yes when they want a snack or a treat or whatever. You know, you don't want to be stressed out about money. And so if you're anxious about money, no matter how much you have, it's possible to be anxious, right? You could have, 12 grand set aside for this trip, but then still worry that you're overspending. Or you could have 2 grand set aside for this trip and be worried that you're overspending. So regardless of your budget, I recommend that you know what it is in advance. And so you have that number in your head. And then if this, if it sounds like you, if it sounds like someone that is going to be constantly worried about overspending, on your phone, just make a spreadsheet and keep a running tally of all of the things that you spend. And so that way you can see how close you are to overspending or not. And so that way you can just spend freely. When you know you have a budget, you know what your limits are. That way you can just spend without worrying. So, do enjoy Disney, splurge, save up a little longer if you need to. Don't try to do it on a shoestring, and really have a good time. So overall, our family loved it. We had a great time. We didn't really know what to expect. And like I said, the anticipation was just kind of weird because we didn't know if it was actually going to happen. So I hope that these tips were useful for you. I hope that if you're considering a Disney vacation, this gives you some information so you can make the best choice for your family. So the best choice for my family doesn't mean it's the best choice for yours. So like I said, I think they're doing a great job. I think that they're minimizing risk. I think there are some people that probably shouldn't go. If you have, if you're high risk health-wise, I would probably skip it. If you're super, super anxious about the virus, you might not have fun. You would just be more irritated with people that might, enter your bubble. If you have a young child that you're going to be fighting with to keep a mask on, or, kids that, if they're overstimulated, they're going to be falling apart at 4 p.m. anyway. They don't need a mask to give them another reason to fall apart at 4 p.m. So every child is different. Every family is different. And we had a great time. I would recommend it if you are considering it, and you've learned all about the measures and you feel like your family can handle it. Let's do it. Let's have a good time. But if there are things that make you higher risk or make it make it seem like you're not going to have as much fun right now, then maybe it's time to skip it and you can do it when things get back to normal. So I hope this video is helpful. We'd love to hear more in the comments, or if you have any questions for me, I'd love to answer them. Click the link for an outlined version of all this information on the blog, and don't forget to subscribe to All Mom Does on YouTube and like us on Facebook.